So this is Ganesh, or if you favor Sanskrit, Ganesha. That's kind of Hindu terminology. In the Tibetan tradition, he's known as Ganapati, Sokdak. And this particular emanation is Sokdak Marchen, which means the Lord of Hosts, the Great Red Lord of Hosts. If you can see, his body is actually tinged red within this Thangka, this painting. But in a painting that didn't have such a dark motif, you'd be usually brightly red. And his name actually means he's the Lord of lots and lots of spirits. And so he's invoked both in the Hindu tradition and within the Buddhist tradition as somebody that can overcome obstacles through his sort of vast army of spirits. There's a sutra tradition of Ganesh, Ganapati. It's called the Ganapati Hridaya Sutra. In it, Buddha talks about the benefits of a very long kind of mantra that Ganesh has, and that if you recite that mantra, then it will get rid of your obstacles, especially in relating to business and success. So very similar to the Hindu understanding of Ganesh, but within that tradition, he's considered a worldly deity, meaning a high-level sort of spirit, a god, essentially, that is not yet fully enlightened. Now, the interesting thing about this particular piece is that he's actually an emanation. The Great Red Ganapati is an emanation of the Bodhisattva of compassion, of Avalokiteshvara. So Avalokiteshvara, this Bodhisattva of compassion, is emanating himself in the form of Ganapati, somebody who eliminates obstacles. Now, this particular image is associated with the Chaksamvara lineage, Demchok in Tibetan. Very popular tantric practice that kind of orients around Chaksamvara and all of the internal yogas, Tumo and things like that. So it's connected with removing obstacles to tantric practice. Now, let's go through and talk about some of his attributes. The mythological understanding of Ganesh within the Hindu tradition is that he was the son of Shiva, and then Shiva didn't know that he had a son. He came back after wandering and doing meditation in the mountains, and the son was guarding his mother from intruders while she was taking a bath. And Shiva, not knowing that it was his son, didn't like that, and so he cut off his head really quick and sort of said, "Honey, I'm home." And the wife said, "Oh, did you see your son out there?" And he kind of blanched and got a little bit afraid of his wife, and then went out searching for a new head for him, which a noble elephant then offered to him. So that's kind of the Hindu myth around it, or legend. And in the Buddhist tradition, we don't really have an origin story. It's just kind of assumed that that's the case. Now, Avalokiteshvara is connected in many traditions with high-level kind of tantric understanding. So, of course, it makes sense that he would emanate as a powerful being that can get rid of obstacles. In particular, so this image has 12 arms total, and you could say that the 12 arms represent the 12 links of interdependence, or you could say that the set of 6, equaling 12, is the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections along the path, and each hand holds something different. In his top left hand, he's holding a pestle, something that can grind. And we're just researching. It's a pretty rare implement, but it's sometimes connected with Shaivite, deities that are connected to Shiva. So remember, he's connected kind of historically to Shiva. And they were saying that the grinding of the pestle, if you're grinding herbs, is connected to the one taste, the ekarasa of mindfulness. So that's sort of a first. You learn something new all the time. Here in his other left hand, he's holding a bow. And the left hand in pretty much all Tibetan symbolism is the wisdom hand. So on the left it's wisdom, on the right it's compassion. And so the bow is then associated with the arrow over here. Now, not all of these will have their connecting implements, right? So there's no mortar over here. It's just a pestle. But in this instance, the bow represents wisdom, and the arrow represents the active aspect, the masculine aspect, so to speak, of compassion. So if you are realizing wisdom in the world, you're manifesting it as compassion. So that's how the bow and arrow are connected. This is a tantric staff, full of a lot of symbolism in and of itself. So you can see he's holding it here, and then this is a long life base, and it holds Amrita, which literally means deathless. So not, Rita, death. It's cognate with the Greek word ambrosia, actually. And the idea there is that if you realize enlightenment, you understand the deathless state. You go beyond death, because death is only an illusion. And then it's got a cross Vajra, and then 3 heads, a fresh head, a fresh dead corpse's head, and then a drying one, and then a skull, a dry one. And those represent any of a set of 3. So it could represent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or it could represent past, present, future. It could represent the three bodies of the Buddha. So the Dharmakaya, the ultimate reality body of an enlightened being, Symbolism, the complete enjoyment body, meaning the manifestation of their energy, and Nirmanakaya, like their emanation body, so their physical body. So it has a deep symbolism in and of itself. In his left hand, the bottom left hand, the second to last bottom left hand, he's holding a skull cup with blood within it. So this is very emblematic of wisdom, pretty much across the Tibetan tradition. So the skull, it's open receptacle, feminine, and then blood is associated with menstrual blood. And so those two together especially represent a kind of blissful wisdom. Here he's holding a trishul, like a trident, and a shield together. And that trident is especially connected with Shiva. So Shiva, you see a lot of, Shiva always holds the trident, and it can represent past, present, future, again, those sets of 3. But because it's held with the shield, it represents both wisdom and compassion coming together. So as he's holding that in his hand. And then if you move over here, he's holding this axe, which is kind of traditionally, in both Hinduism and Buddhism, his weapon of choice. So if you see Ganesh, very often he's going to have an axe in the right hand. So it's a callback to that earlier kind of Puranic tradition. The Puranas are the legends, the collections of the legends and stories associated with the different gods. He's holding the arrow we talked about. This is actually a form of an elephant goad. And it's actually a very specific symbol of the awareness of a lack of mindfulness. So if you're mindful of something, you're paying attention to what's happening in the present moment, and then when you wander off, noticing that you're wandering off is alertness. So it's represented by that elephant hook, that goad. You're steering the elephant of your mind back onto the path of mindfulness. In this hand, he's holding a sword, which is, kind of a pan-Buddhist trope on cutting through negativity, but also the ever-flowing stream of thoughts. And so it's representing, compassion, but also sometimes it shows fire around it. This one doesn't have fire around it, which will represent wisdom. So it's the compassion, the sword of compassion, cutting through delusion. In this hand, he's holding a spear. Again, that's just another weapon. All weapons are designed to sort of cut through ignorance. So they're not really weapons of aggression. They're weapons of compassion, of peace. In his two central hands, he's holding a Vajra, which is actually another weapon, a dorje in Tibetan. So Vajra, it was connected with the Lord of the Sky in really early Hindu and Vedic. It's Indra is his name. And he's very similar to Zeus. And so that Vajra represented like lightning, thunderbolt. And here within specifically Tibetan Buddhism, but Tantric Buddhism more generally, it represents the unbreakability of mind. And it's virtually always held in the right hand. And it very often will go with a feminine implement. And here it's a skull cup, again, with a wrathful offering in the middle that is representing that bliss. So it's the masculine and the feminine together, the wisdom and compassion together, or the skillful means and the bliss together, and they're inseparable. And he's doing this posture that's called the dancing posture, very graceful. It's interesting, you often see Ganesh being referenced, even in the Hindu tradition, that's incredibly graceful or very sort of having an ease about him, even though he's of great size, very a natural athleticism. And here he's representing that in this dancing form. And what he's standing on is his vehicle, which is actually, well, here it's kind of huge. That's a Tibetan interpretation of a rat. And in the Tibetan sort of artistic tradition, rats and a mongoose get kind of conflated very often. And so they're both connected with wealth in a way, and you can see that here, you can barely see a jewel, green jewel, maybe it's an emerald coming out of his mouth. So that's very common. Here, the entire piece is surrounded by, the central figure is surrounded by a mandorla, which is a sort of an aura around the body that is flames. And flames always represent wisdom because they burn away the negativity or the hindrances to realizing what we truly are. And, so that leaves only enlightenment. And he's standing on this disc, which can represent, probably here actually represents the sun. And then it's housed within this lotus. So there's a lotus and then a disc, and then his vehicle, the rat, and then he's standing on it very gracefully doing this dance. Down here you can see there are some offerings that very just common, traditional in most Tibetan depictions of the central deities, central